So first of all, thank you all for having me. It's such an honor to be here. I've been looking forward to this opportunity for the past few months. Thank you, continued thanks to everyone who has already been thanked. Special shouts out to my wife. I married my ex-wife, you all. I married my ex-wife was the mother of my children. And I said, this is the last time that I am marrying my ex-wife. Right. My best friend, and I'm so very happy that you are here, baby. Thank you very much. My work speculates Black futures by looking at current pop cultural events, current politics, and then imagines what that future will be speculatively, but it also looks at and thinks about what those futures look like if we never were colonized people, stolen from a land and placed inside of another land where I still argue, we are not free in. This particular piece, how many of you have seen the show? Not enough of you, but shouts out to you, those of you who have seen it. Make sure you see that show. It's up. It's not up for much longer. And this work specifically, this piece right here, which is in the gallery, you will see in a different form. You will see a time-lapse drawing. I'm going to tell you all about my process. How many artists do we have in the room? Not enough. All right, awesome. But shouts out to the artists in the room. All right, I see you too. All right, awesome. So I use the iPad Pro and an app called Procreate. Anybody familiar? Right? It's very simple, right? And I like working with the simple materials because I roll with my iPad everywhere I go. I can show you all how to draw on the iPad if you are interested, right? And then I save those literally through the click of a button as a time-lapse drawing. And then I love to project them with my DJ set spinning as the background music of that. It's a really, really simple process. But for me, it's a way of illustrating through sound what my artwork sounds like, if that makes sense. So that is what you're going to see in the gallery. But what is my purpose? So my purpose is to establish my philosophy and theory by creating multimedia art that inspires us to create free and equitable futures for all people, beginning with Black people first. That last part is very important, beginning with Black people first. Why? Because many times, most times, I would argue most times, when Black people create culture, we make it and we give it to the world. But what happens is, throughout history, we get locked out of that, we get erased from that culture. So, my goal is to create this culture, give it to the world, and make sure that we're not locked out of it. This is an imagining of an algorithm. I believe that white supremacy is a philosophy that is supported by a system called racism. White supremacy is a philosophy. Racism is the system that supports the philosophy that embeds every part of our culture. As I was at Harvard a few years ago, I started thinking heavily around trauma as an algorithm. And I started thinking, if you could heal colonial trauma, what would be the algorithm for that? This is an imagining of me thinking through that as this repetitive pattern. My work is inspired by Maddie Abdul-Clairween, Pedro Bell, Overton Lord, the artist of the Parliament Funkadelic era. These album covers these are albums that I have in my collection. These album covers imagine Black free spaces. I was growing up on imagery like this. So you're talking about images that were created in the early 70s, late 60s even, and I was absorbing these images. The bulk of this record collection came from two black women who are no longer in this earth realm anymore. And I was, as a 20-year-old, 19, 20-year-old, I was telling them what I was doing with my record collection. I was like, yeah, so I'm collecting these albums because I'm looking for original hip hop samples. Now, I didn't explain it that clearly, but they were like, wait, you're doing what? You're collecting vinyl records because you're looking for the original sounds, like in rap music? What? Right? Like, now we call that crate digging, right? And that practice took me all the way to Harvard. It's great. It's a part of my art making practice now. But as a 19 and 20-year-old, I was figuring out my art practice through the legacy of artists that I'm standing on the shoulders of today. But with the work that I'm inspired by, I'm also inspired by political artists like Emory Douglas here, or Cynthia St. James, or in the top corner there, you'll see a very heavy influence of my work through the legacy of Charles Bibbs. I want you to pay close attention to point 6 and point 9, if you can read that. Create art of social concerns that even a child can understand, and create art that challenges the colonization of the imagination. When I think about the purpose of my art, this is what I'm trying to do. And I believe it's important for me to work in a legacy of artists who came before me. So I started responding to the album cover art. These 3 albums are classic albums, some of which are hip hop samples, but are contain hip hop samples. And these particular 3 records, once again, came from these 2 black women that invested their family's records into my life. They trusted me with them, and I cherish them. I still spin them in DJ sets locally, too. I spin vinyl locally. But the piece that you see illustrated on the right-hand side there is a piece of I call it Grandma's Hands. And Grandma's Hands is a song by Bill Withers and Gil Scott-Heron as well. And it depicts a praying grandmother with old weathered hands. Those hands have seen and experienced life. And she is laying hands on her grandson. And I imagine that her grandson is looking back through the sphere or the lens of hip hop culture to see how to survive the police experience. Notice his hands are up. So are the grandmother's hands. Her hands are on him. His hands are up in what we may imagine as surrender. This is a piece in progress, but I love to show you my progress. I'm also inspired by various historians. I am working on a book of 360 images, thinking 360 degrees around my philosophy of theorists. For example, a sociologist, Franz Fanon, psychologist Francis Cress Welsing, and African art historian John Henrik Clarke. These are writers and scholars who inspired me in my youth and who still inspire my thought today. In 2020, it was a very difficult time in our nation. It was a very difficult time globally. I had just moved back here from Harvard. Literally, I had just moved back here, and literally parts of the world were on fire through protests. As I was moving, I was getting alerts on my phone to avoid certain parts. Like when I hit Columbus, they're like, do not drive downtown. My friends were blowing up my phone. Hey, where are you at? Are you safe? Etc. What also happened at that time, as soon as I touched ground here, I was getting call after call after call. This particular body of work is from Giertz Gallery in Buffalo, or for Giertz Gallery in Buffalo. They had to cancel my solo exhibition, and they were like, Stacey, we know you really wanted to make this exhibition, but we're wondering if you would be willing to do this billboard project. We have 12 billboards that we have, and we want is that my buddy CK? What's going on? We're going to talk about CK in a little bit as well. SEPA asked me if I would do this, create these billboard images. So I came up with a type and image project called Black Matters. And it was 12 images with 12 messages. So messages like Black Education Matters here in the lower corner. Black Joy Matters here in the top right corner. Black Family Matters in the middle. Black Lives Matter, this Target symbol. And that is actually the Target logo that I used in there too. So these billboards functioned in two different ways. For people who were walking by, they could take the time to stop and view the commentary, read the messages with the hashtag. For example, Black Joy Matters, right? But if you were driving by, you would only really be able to partake in the message, and that was very important. So it functioned in these two different ways. My goal with these images were to spark a conversation that would be continued with the audience. So if you notice, for example, this is a very specific depiction of a Black family. But what was meant as a prompt, this was meant to prompt the audience to think, well, what does your family look like? You should draw that. Contribute to this conversation. Because these billboards were in the community. We're talking about building the community. This is the cover of I Am Alphonso Jones. It was talked about in my bio. I Am Alphonso Jones is considered the first Black Lives Matters inspired graphic novel. Came out in 2017. And I created that book, most of that book, here in the Champaign Public Library. I'm very, very proud about that. When I took this position at the University of Illinois, this was one of the books I came in working on. Very, very proud of that book. Around 2020 also, I created this two-page comic for Colorful Histories. It's a they create two-page comics about Black history. And this was about Winks Lodge, which was a Black resort that was created by a couple when some children, I believe, they were actually kicked out of the YMCA. I could be wrong about that. It might be a YMCA, but they were kicked out of a particular resort, and this Black couple said, you know what, we're gonna build our own. And I still have that philosophy of creating our own. I think that is very, very important. In order to counteract with racism and white supremacy, Black people need to create our own spaces. So I make work about that a lot. Soon after, I'm very proud to say that I illustrated this book written by Alvern Ball, the first graphic novel on the Tulsa Race Massacre. And I like to say the Tulsa Race Massacre and Rebuild also, because the community did rebuild the city of Tulsa soon after it was destroyed. How many of you know the story? Okay, not enough of you. Okay, put some hands up. Good. This book is a primer for people who don't know that history, but also it's a really short graphic novel. It's considered a young adult graphic novel, but with my drawing in the book, I tried to age the book down so that middle schoolers and even elementary students would be, parents and teachers would be comfortable allowing their students to read the book. So you can find that book in your local library. This is my process. This is a page from the book. I'm working on the iPad Pro. I'm drawing in black on a layer that I drop down in opacity to look like pencils. I create a new layer and do finished inks. And I worked with my son and some former students on this book. So my son actually colored this page. I was really, really proud of that too. I get to work with my son on graphic novels. Super awesome. He works in the family business. I love that. But this is my process, y'all. And I'm showing you all this because I want you to, be inspired and use it, steal it. Totally, be inspired to use it. This is another page. So I collaborate, I like to say I collaborate a lot, but that's actually not true. I'm very specific. I've had to develop a system of collaborating with people. And one of my collaborators is a local psychologist, one of my best friends, Kamal Grantham, who, and when we first met, we met at our first Black Mal exhibition. Black Mal is a combination of my art alias and Kamal's art alias. So Kamal goes by DJ Kamal Mal, and my art alias for the past 20 years has been Black Star. And these are so what we do is we create these collages, these experiences, and these curated DJ sets. We've even started working with my homeboy Chris Kinson, DJ CK, and we create these art experiences that we like to say are pretty unique in the community. And these are some examples of the collages that we've made. Recently, some of our work was featured in a Black faculty exhibition called Black on Black on Black on Black that was last semester in the Cranard Art Museum. And these are 4 of those images that Kamal and I exhibited. The first configuration of that show took place in Buffalo, New York at the Albright Knox Northland Gallery. And they hung in a circular pattern that was meant to resemble a universe, or a galaxy, a universe. And this configuration of planets. There were 10 images, 5 images on the inside, 5 different images on the outside. And directly in the center of this galaxy was a DJ set that you would hear through a localized speaker that you could only hear if you stood right under the speaker. So you had to be in the center of this universe in order to partake in the sound of it. But it was also designed for participants to stand 6 feet apart within the circle, and then of course further apart from outside. And this is myself, Patrick, Nikita, and Blair, the 4 Black faculty who participated in the Black on Black on Black exhibition. And these are some of those images from the opening and other events that took place last semester. I collaborated with Cynthia Oliver for Virago Mandem, which was her examination of Black masculinity through these different vantage points. And she gave me, let me see, I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. She gave me about 15 prompts. And I think I even added some prompts in here around Black masculinity, and she wanted me to interpret them. And it was a really, really fun project. Cynthia Oliver is a choreographer. And we got nominated for a Bessie Award for this project. A Bessie Award is like the Oscars or the Grammys of dance, right? So it's a big deal. It's a really, really big deal. We didn't get it, but I don't really care as much about that as even being nominated. I'm working on a graphic novel right now with my best friend, one of my best friends and collaborators, John Jennings. This project is called Night Boy. And Night Boy, Jamal Jemison is a Black teen with dyslexia. But his dyslexia is part of his superpower. It allows him to see the hidden world that nobody else can see. This world of monsters that steal people from the city of Buffalo. And Jamal is a defender of the night as Night Boy. That's a picture of him in his were-gargoyle form hugging his little sister Tia. And I designed, John Jennings initially designed the character, but in my design, I fashioned them as in the likeness of my son Solomon and my daughter Nyla Simone. I talked about this piece a little bit. This was a piece that I initially created for the Sundance Film Festival. All right, so this piece, I'd never gotten a prompt like this before, and this happened in 2020 as well. Sundance Film Festival, this part of it was online, it was on Zoom, and I was part of a group of artists who were responding to these prompts. The prompt for this was, if you as an artist, now think about this, an artist in a room, right? If money were not of any concern, what type of art would you make? I had never heard a prompt like that before. And it was definitely one of the most exciting projects I'd ever worked on at that time. If I didn't need money, if money was I shouldn't say didn't need money, but if all my financial needs were met, what type of work would I make? And I realized after thinking about that, just because my financial needs are met doesn't mean that police brutality ends. Doesn't mean that housing inequities or food deserts end. I realized that I would still make the same type of artwork that I make now. I don't know if that's sad or not. I still think about that though. You will see these pieces right outside the gallery of three of my favorite musicians. How many of you know who Rakim is? Rakim Allah? Awesome. Oh my goodness. All right, you all should know who the artists are that I'm about to mention. All right, one of my favorite rappers, definitely, and I met him in person when I was at Harvard, and that is actually Rakim's signature. He signed my iPad. I was like, okay, he signed it right there. I'm not at all about to move Rakim's signature. It is where it's gonna stay. And it's interesting because I sampled an image from a video called, the video is called When I Be on the Mic. And in this particular point of the rhyme, he says, I can see the future when the God writes rhymes. And he starts looking up into the camera like this. So I sampled that and drew it. So literally he's looking at his signature of himself in the future, right? This is an image of Grace Jones in the middle. And then on the right-hand side, one of my favorite rappers and performance artists who we lost on Halloween, I'm gonna say 3 years ago, MF Doom. MF Doom is a performance artist who fashioned himself after the Fantastic Four villain, Dr. Doom. And in this reimagining of himself, he tells his origin story on his first album as MF Doom, Operation Doomsday. He tells the origin of himself through Fantastic Four samples from vinyl records. It's amazing, amazing. Or Marvel Comics records. It's an amazing, amazing story and narrative. But I look at him as a multimedia performance artist. He would even send imposters to his concerts dressed as him, right? With this commentary. What is more important, the words that I'm saying or me, the celebrity, right? Fantastic commentary. I started documenting and thinking about, talking about in my lectures, what I do for fun and how I am relaxing in the COVID era. And I started talking about this idea of Black joy mattering, taking a moment out to decompress from the things that we're all going through in this time. At this time, I set up my living room because we were all virtual, it wasn't really going anywhere, still in the quarantine. I set up my living room as a DJ space. DJing was a 30-year deferred dream that I now I can afford to entertain. And I spin records in my studio and in public, in the community, with DJ CK as well, one of my awesome new friends. And we create these experiences that are free and open to the public, always kid friendly, always multimedia because I always bring my iPad and I love to get people on it as well. But I started lecturing and talking about this because we were in a time where many of us were by ourselves and we had to literally learn, some of us had to learn how to love ourselves, right? I was surrounded by some really awesome black women who were friends of mine who taught me these ways of loving myself. Even the idea of like taking a bath. Now that sounds funny, right? But I didn't take baths, I took showers, right? And my mother had been telling me for years, Stacey, you need to take baths, not showers. And I didn't listen to my mother, why would I do that, right? So these other women told me about this, and I now to this day, I have exfoliating gloves. I didn't know what exfoliating was, right? I got products in my closet. I got all kinds of bubble bath stuff and all this amazing stuff. But it became this, at this particular time, I was learning to love myself, even to separate from the things that were going on in the world and just take a moment. So I started lecturing and talking about that. And that's why I shared this image, because DJing was a part of how I kind of connected to the world as well. All right. So if you come back, there will be an announcement coming. I will be coming back to Parkland to talk to a few classes, I think, right? One class, two classes? How many classes? I don't know.
It's going to be the Art and Design Club.
The Art and Design Clubs. All right, that's really awesome. That word will go out. There will be flyers up. We haven't set a date yet, but it will be soon. And these are some, I'm hoping to come back here actually to present some giant images blasted up on the dome, some animations that you saw in the beginning when you came here. That was a test as I'm teaching myself Adobe After Effects. So one of the things I do is as I'm learning technology and figuring things out, I love to share my process. So these are two images that will be animated, and this is part of my next series of projects, which also will have a sound and meditation component. All right. Once again, this work is coming out of my thinking that white supremacy is a philosophy that is supported by a system called racism, and I am looking for the counter algorithm for black healing of this. And this is my initial imagining of what black healing looks like as an algorithm. All right, thank you very much, everyone. You can hit me up on social media, you can clap. These are all the places you can find me. I'm not really on Twitter, though. I am on Instagram, and then you can hit me up on my website. But I'm also out in the community a lot. So feel free to connect with me on social media. I draw publicly with people. So anyone who is interested in drawing publicly, creating comics, I started doing this many, many years ago in the local cafes. I am doing that again. So if you are interested in joining with me and like-minded people, hit me up and we can get together and draw and have some fun. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we lost the microphone.
Oh, okay.
I think you speak loud enough, but maybe if anybody has any questions, and then you could repeat.
I will repeat the questions that before we have it recorded. Absolutely.
Yes. Have you ever read Adrienne Marie Brown?
Yes, Emergent Strategies. That's the book. Yeah. Oh, and I actually met her. I moderated a panel with her and Toshi Regan, John Jennings, and Damian Duffy and myself. I moderated a panel. And, yep, absolutely.
Have you read Octavia's Brood?
I have Octavia's Brood, and I have not read it. Yep.
I'm reading it right now.
All right. Well, I need to read that, too. Yeah, it's in my long list of books that I have to read. I think I have 2 copies of Octavia's Brood, actually. Yeah.
I think we had a question right here.
Oh, awesome.
You said you attended Harvard. How was it being a part of a social group that you were not a part of, and how did you deal with the being content with where you were at, while trying to achieve a degree from a college that was foreign to your livelihood?
Wow. excuse me. I attended Harvard through a fellowship. So it was 2 semesters long. Half of my time at Harvard, the question was basically, how was it at Harvard? I loved it. It was an amazing experience. Half of my time there was shut down because it was the beginning of the COVID era. Fortunately, my responsibilities to the university were completed like the month after I got there, so which was a fellowship talk. And I knocked it out in October. And I spent the rest of that time researching. So I was there to study in the hip hop archive that they had there. And I was able to spend a little bit of time there. I was able to spend a little bit of time in a few classes. But I'll be honest with you, after my colloquium talk, how many of you know who Cornel West is? Anybody know who Cornel West is? Right. Cornel West, when he was at Harvard, he always got the first question to the Harvard Fellows at the Hutchins Center. And he asked me, he looked at my work, and he said, Stacey, he said, Brother Stacey, oh, that was my best Cornel West impression. He said, Brother Stacey, I love this work. I can see it, brother. I can see it, Brother Stacey. How do we build this thing that you're drawing? For the last 3 years, I've been obsessed with that question. How do we build this future that I'm drawing? I'm trying to figure that out. You're asking me how Harvard was. I became obsessed with a question. Fortunately, because of, I'll say fortunately, a particular circumstance happened where I recognized I was confronted with my privilege, right? In the COVID era, I was on leave from the University of Illinois, still being paid by the university. And I was at Harvard studying, being paid by Harvard, right? But I couldn't go anywhere because we were in a quarantine. So literally, as people were losing their jobs, I was making more money than I'd ever made before. And I was confronted with, okay, what do I do with this privilege that I have? I supported a lot of other artists. I gave a lot of support. But I also spent a lot of time learning new parts of my art practice. And my queen-size bed in my very small apartment in Boston became my office. And I spent hours after hours after hours working on a project that I'm still working on now. I'm not going to tell you about it because if anybody else steals my project, I'm going to be so hot. But my time at Harvard opened up these possibilities and totally changed my practice. But it was these particular circumstances that happened, me being away from teaching and not having service responsibilities to the university, and money not being an object. I was paying for my children's education, and I was able to do that. Matter of fact, with a portion of that money that I saved from Harvard, my wife and I just bought our first commercial property last Friday. We bought a 5-unit apartment building. And it's, yeah, thank you. You can clap with that. Because this is also part, it wasn't just about an investment property and us making this passive income, but it was about the ability to give housing to people as well. And we think very serious about the ability, how do we use our resources to help other people? So that's what Harvard started to allow me to do. I'm very, very grateful for that. Thank you, that's a great question. Anyone else? Yes.
I went to the gallery before this, and I told Patrick,
Mm-hmm.
he locked me out from the bench. But anyway, in one of his statements, he wrote, said, in the past we survived, and for the future we wanted to thrive. As an artist and art professor, how do you go about it for the thrive, not just the survive?
Yeah, so I'm going to quote Bettina L. Love. Her book titled We Want to Do More Than Survive. The Black experience, we talk about surviving a lot, but it's not about surviving. It's about so much more than surviving. When you survive an experience, many times you survive with just barely holding on to your life. But we have to think about what our most beautiful and opulent and potential futures are. With the work that I make, I like to look at that and imagine that. Somebody asked me recently, do I draw Black trauma? I do draw Black trauma. But to be honest with you, I try not to draw Black trauma a lot because you can literally turn on the news every single night and watch Black people die. You could watch Philando Castillo. Philando Castillo was killed. You watched him die live on Facebook. How many times do we need to watch Black people die? So for me, I'm trying to go, I acknowledge that, but I'm trying to go into this other place where we're not constantly responding to Black trauma and Black death and Black murder. Because it is meant to also be a distraction so that we cannot plan our liberated futures, our free futures. So I draw on what Sun Ra would call the other side of time. He says in his movie, Space is the Place, the first thing we must do is to consider time officially ended. We'll work on the other side of time. There's a piece, I will really quickly, I'm going to show you. Let me see if I can go back. One of the Black Mount images, here we go. This first image here is titled Black Boy on the Other Side of Time. It is a portrait of George Stinney Jr. He was a 14-year-old Black boy who was murdered. He's the youngest person to be executed in history. He's 14 years old, accused of murdering 2 white girls. He was so small, they had to stack him up on books in order to electrocute him. I remixed George Stinney's portrait with these Kumo D-style glasses that kind of hide his appearance, and his crown. Anybody recognize that as another pop cultural reference? Any Star Trek fans in the house? Right, absolutely. We recognize that as the space station DS9, right? I hid him. I said, if I could hide George Stinney Jr., if I could keep him protected, where could I keep him protected at? It literally would be outside of our own time. In Gene Roddenberry's future, where there is no racism, right? I used to get hot with Gene Roddenberry. I'm like, there's no racism in your future? How do we get there? Because you didn't give us the algorithm for that. The genius of Gene Roddenberry is that he didn't give us the algorithm for that. But I'm obsessed with that question. George Stinney Jr. is safe on the other side of time. This piece is called Black Boy on the Other Side of Time. That's how I look at this and think about this and deal with this. All right. Any other questions really quickly? That was a long answer, but oh man, I'm in a zone right now. I feel like it. There was another question. Just ask it. Yes?
If I wanted to do a public artwork with you, how do you envision a white person like having conversations about decolonization?
Ha, I love that question. And so I want to make sure I answer that right. Well, first of all, I do collaborate with white people. I think that was part of the question, right? How do I imagine white people imagining, or how would I think about white people thinking about decolonization, right? Is that kind of, okay, cool. I'm thinking about this with my class this semester. My class, I'm teaching an art class called Art D 499, Illustration. The topic of our subject this semester is Afrofuturism. My mostly white and Asian students, I have one Black student in my class, they all have to think about what futures look like, where Black people share political, economic, and environmental resources with the entire planet equally, right? They have to think about this from a Black perspective. Oh, my students are struggling, right? And it's meant to be a project about sympathy and empathy. How do we use our art to think from these different vantage points? right? We co-occupy a planet. This is what I put in my syllabus. We co-occupy this planet, right? So how do we function in this planet? It takes all of us to build these systems, right? The Underground Railroad was supported by sympathetic white people as well. Freedom doesn't come by just us alone. It comes through allyship. So I hope I answered that question. Does that make sense? All right, so that would start with a conversation though, right? You talked about a public project. We would have to have a conversation around that. Awesome. Anyone else? How are we on time? We good?
We're good.
All right.
A few more minutes.
A few more minutes.
It's not a question, I have one.
Okay, there is a question. I'll make sure I'll get to yours. Got to get to yours, right? Come on. All right.
Stacey, as a science fiction fan who immediately zoned in on DS9, I was like Whoopi when I saw Star Trek. I said, "Oh, we do exist in the future."
Oh yeah, yeah.
When you look at your algorithm, do you see it morphing as you start to answer or seek out the answers to your question?
Oh my goodness. I like that question. So the question is, does the algorithm change? Does it morph? Does it become, I would say, does it become what it needs to be in that particular moment, right? I think of an algorithm, when I think about all of my artwork, so I make all of my artwork inspired by the 5 primary elements of hip hop, right? Anybody know what those elements are? Any hip hop fans, scholars in the house? MCing, well, DJing, started with the DJ. MCing, breakdancing, graffiti, and knowledge. As a system, I actually frame my artwork on these 5 tenets of hip hop, everything that I do. Because for me, that is my algorithm. Here's the thing though, hip hop has changed in the last 50 years. We're celebrating the history of hip hop this year, right? The 50th anniversary of hip hop this year, right? Hip hop has changed. I've become that old dude, right? It's like, oh my God, what are y'all listening to? This young people stuff. Oh, that ain't hip hop. I have become that person, right? But I've also become that person that recognizes that the culture must change. But there are conversations that we also have to concern ourselves with. We cannot leave our history in our efforts to secure wealth and the ability to free our friends and family from our conditions, right? And that's what you really see in a lot of hip hop. There's a lot of amazing artists who have amazing commentaries that they're not allowed to share because they are employees of the music corporations. And they tell them what they can and can't say. Imagine that, right? That's the power of hip hop. When hip hop came out of protest in a political movement, the Black Power movement. And when Black people were becoming, in the 80s and 90s, were really becoming super political, corporations started to take charge of this. And then for the last 30 years, we've seen that. So hip hop has changed. It needs to change. But at the same time, we cannot lose the history, the origins of that. That's why when I'm DJing sets, I'm spinning original hip hop samples. I'm playing samples from the 60s, from the 70s, from jazz, from blues, to punk, to rock. I collect vinyl, so I have spent a lot of money securing vinyl records to spin to create a particular experience. But for me, I think like as an archivist, right? So I'm archiving these hip hop samples because it's the foundation of the culture, right? So the algorithm, that is one way in which I think about the algorithm changing, but it cannot lose its foundation. That makes sense? All right, awesome. Anyone else? Yes, you did have a question. I want to make sure I get anyone else who has a question too. All right,
Oh,
awesome.
me?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm on.
You're
I'm
on.
just curious about the work that you made that's in the gallery,
Mhm.
the video. You had made it specifically for the show.
Yep.
Can you talk about the ideas behind that work and how you kind of decided to create that
Yeah.
and the music as well?
Absolutely. So the question is about the work in the gallery. What inspired that work? I talked a little bit about it. It's a time-lapse video of the first image that I did for Sundance Film Festival. I don't think I told you everything about it. Let me go. All right, so this piece is inspired by the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. I forgot to mention this. Thank you for asking about this. The 7 principles of Kwanzaa, that is another system, another algorithmic system that I look at and think about also with hip hop. And it is, and we know that Kwanzaa, we do know that Kwanzaa is a holiday celebrated for 7 days right after Christmas, all the way through January 1st, right? I look at that system as a pretty perfect system that could be the foundation of a form of government, of a constitution. The principles of Kwanzaa and the 5 primary elements of hip hop are 2 systems that I look at and think about as a future imagining of a Black liberation government. This is also what I started to do and think about when I was at Harvard too, right? Imagine I have the time to think about this now. So each one of these systems supports the next system, supports the next system, supports the next system. But this is a wave of water that when this is embedded with the rest of my animations will be a large body of water with these Black systems that think about what I imagine freedom looking like. So you have this bottom figure, and you might not really see it through the screen here, but there's blood emerging from the figure's hands. And it takes hard work and bloodshed to build this future that we're imagining. So, but it supports these other systems, right? This other system inside Kwanzaa. So that's what that work is about. I made a time-lapse video of that with a DJ set that I spun in my living room that includes the other artists, MF Doom, Rakim, and Grace Jones, but also is a sound experiment as I'm learning how to DJ. So as part of my practice, I am documenting a lot of my imperfections. It's a lot of uncomfortability and showing my process, because hip hop is I'm thinking about I'm thinking about honoring it in the best way that I can. But in order for me to honor that as a system, I have to learn as much of it about the primary elements as I can. So that DJ set is how I imagine this artwork sounding, right? As a 32-minute DJ set with this time-lapse video playing 3 times to its completion. All right, great question, thank you.
Rhyme is riding on the flex, the Terminator X. That's why I never can stop, and I don't stop. Keep the flow of the info to the brain pop, and he be pumping the sound, and I look, you get down and start piling. Terminator X, buck wildin'.
If the truth hurts, then you'll be in pain. If the truth drives you crazy, you'll be insane. The laws are designed so that the Black man as a collective cannot get paid. As I told you before, we're at war.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Some say it's sad they get mad cause we're down with the boogie down. Ice-T, Big Daddy on the rhythm now. I go steps or 2 and I bet ya. With the 2 Live crew and we'll get ya. Even got some mix-a-lot, MC Light, that's right. She can win a rhyme fight. We'll fill the floor with incredible feats. Terminator X, Valley of the cheap beats. I'm giving you while you're getting a little taste of the PE. That's what it be. It doesn't matter, the planet still turns.